Last week on Legally Kidnapped.
Good evening. Our top story this week. This past Friday marks the 10th anniversary of the youngest prisoner to be held at Guantanamo Bay, even though this Canadian citizen has been eligible for a transfer back to Canada for almost 9 months after the former child soldier's October 2010 plea deal. In Connecticut this week, the Supreme Court rules that non-custodial parents who live out of state do not need to undergo a home study before they can take their kids to their homes. In Virginia, a city councilman is calling for the firing of the Human Services Director after a report declares the city's child welfare agency is in crisis, suffering from a lack of leadership, and is sometimes even breaking the law. And in Ohio, a Supreme Court judge orders the records unsealed in the Oak Hill corruption case after several county officials accepted bribes from the Cafaro family in return for the continued rental of properties, including the Department of Job and Family Services. In Delaware, the governor signs a bill making it a requirement for credit checks to be given to help prevent identity theft against foster kids who age out of the system. In Indiana, the child protective industry is blaming low pay, high stress, and media scrutiny for the high turnover rates for CPS agents. And in Kentucky, a watchdog report claims that required reviews of child deaths are not always completed. In Nevada, they're still snatching so many kids these days, regardless of a lack of adequate placements for them, forcing the child protective industry to send them far away from their homes and communities. The Oklahoma child protective industry is making a desperate attempt to sucker in more foster parents by offering them more money in order to satisfy the demands of a class action lawsuit brought on by a New York-based child advocacy group. And the Wall Street Journal reports that the Russian spies who were busted in the USA a couple years back wanted to recruit American-born children into careers of espionage. In Ireland this week, a judge says that Child Protective Services has walked away from its responsibilities after hearing about a boy who has been living home alone and committing crimes to get money for food. The Czech Republic Senate rejects a bill that would lower the number of kids in institutional care by increasing the number of foster homes. In New Zealand, the Public Service Association says there will be no benefits to new mandatory child abuse reporting laws since the system is not adequately funded to deal with it. And Russia is protesting and threatening to stall efforts to implement a new adoption agreement with the United States after 2 foster parents from Virginia were arrested for beating another Russian child. In Canada, a review of a 13-month-old foster baby's death is underway to find out why the boy was left with a man with 85 prior convictions. In Australia, a public inquest into the death of 2-year-old Luke Borisewicz takes place, examining how the boy died after sustaining head injuries while in the care of a 72-year-old foster parent back in 2009. The child protective worker tries to cover her ass by claiming that she was given no choice regarding who the boy was placed with, and according to her, the foster care system was full at that time anyway, and there were no other homes available, except of course for his father's. In England, an analysis of serious case reviews suggests some improvement, but is still concerned that the threshold is too high for screening in calls to social services, even though the country is snatching record numbers of kids these days. The British child protective industry considers implementing more flexible deadlines, which would cause more delays in cases, and a British social worker loses his job. His wife and his kids want to change their name after his obsession and sexual relationship with a 16-year-old girl who he was supposed to be protecting. In entertainment news this week, Green presidential candidate Roseanne Barr says that anybody who eats at Chick-fil-A deserves to get cancer and abuses children because she's upset about the public support of traditional family values and their lack of support for gay marriage. All kinds of shit is going down with Michael Jackson's family these days as the battle over the late singer's estate rages on. Apparently, Michael Jackson's daughter had a fight with Janet after claiming on Twitter that Katherine Jackson had been kidnapped and drugged by family members, and now custody of the kids has temporarily been given to the eldest son of Tito Jackson. A judge orders the CPS probe into the Jackson children's welfare. And in sports, the NCAA fines Penn State University $60 million for the Jerry Sandusky child abuse cover-up. In Florida this week, a CPS agent is arrested for 1 count of falsifying records after claiming that she had done in-home visits. In Arizona, a CPS agent is fired for blowing off more than 30 child abuse cases in 2 years, sometimes leaving reports blank while claiming that she was doing her job. And in Kentucky, a CPS agent gets 5 years for ignoring child abuse cases and falsifying records. In Florida, a woman is accused of attacking a CPS agent after she allegedly grabbed the worker by the arm. In Michigan, the Grand Rapids child protective industry is reviewing its security procedures after a woman bypassed security and threatened a CPS agent. A North Carolina CPS agent who got busted for drunk driving is still allowed to drive kids around in a government-owned car. And in Texas, a family court drug test expert is being complained about by parents who are falsely accused of being drug abusers and are losing access to their kids, while some are saying that he is not even qualified as an expert at all. In North Carolina, a former foster parent goes on trial for sexually abusing an 11-year-old girl in his care. In Oklahoma, a college professor who trained child welfare supervisors is still awaiting his trial for sexually abusing children. In Kentucky, a father is speaking out after his kid was molested by a foster parent. In Texas, a 13-year-old girl testifies about being raped by her foster father. And in New York, a former CPS agent admits to having child pornography on his home computer. In Utah this week, a couple whose 7-month-old baby died in a foster home files a wrongful death lawsuit. The real mother of a little boy who died in a Michigan foster home back in 2006 is fighting to get custody of her sixth child and may even do so. In West Virginia, charges are expected to be filed against the foster parents of a 3-year-old who died after being left in a hot car for 3 hours while the foster parents napped inside the house. In Ohio, the doctor of a teenager who died weighing in at 28 pounds is charged with failing to report abuse or neglect. And in Oklahoma, a couple is beginning their nice long prison sentences for burning, beating, starving, and torturing 3 foster kids in their care. In Kansas, a couple protests the child protective industry, claiming that the agency and their service providers makes money off of stolen children. In Oklahoma, 2 foster kids who were rescued by their real parents are recaptured. Their parents were arrested and the kids were thrown back into foster care. In South Carolina, the state Supreme Court rules that a little Native American girl will stay in Oklahoma with her biological father despite the desperate efforts of her adoptive parents to keep her for themselves. In Ohio, the owner of the nice cougar who bit the mean old CPS agent will not be charged in that case. And finally tonight, Bill Windsor of Lawless America tells off a Michigan family court judge, calling him a crook and promising him a leading role in his movie. For these stories and all the latest dirt on the child protective industry, visit www.legallykidnapped.com. And until next week, this is Baby LK, over and out.